Hey there, small business owners. Welcome to the Tax Talk Podcast, the premier business podcast aimed at unlocking your unique potential. I'm your host, Jared Pallon, and I help my clients do three things: find common sense business solutions, minimize tax and maximize profits, and preserve your legacy. Each podcast episode will dig deep into an everyday problem that small business owners face, and most importantly, explore solutions to these problems. You ready to solve problems? Are you ready to keep more of your hard-earned wealth? And are you ready to preserve your legacy? Let's get to it. Welcome to Tax Talk Podcast, episode 5 of Bobcats, Bosses, and Breakups. Before I get into the background of today's episode, let me introduce today's guest, Stephen van Santen.
Hello.
He is a wealth advisor from Bridgeline Wealth. He's been doing that for the last couple of years. He focuses his time on working with families, private corporations, estates, and family farms. He's always learning, educating himself to better serve his clientele, and is particularly interested in helping people navigate the complexities of the estate and planning for the next generation. Stephen, thank you very much for hopping on the podcast today. So, before we get into today's story and discussion, I will give a brief overview of the Bobcats, Bosses, and Breakups series. So, going back into 2007, owned and operated a flatwood concrete company, had that for about 2 years, and experienced a lot of ups and downs, made a lot of mistakes that in hindsight were probably easily correctable had I brought in the correct professionals to help me along the journey as opposed to trying to take on the world by myself. So the theme of the series is looking at some of these mistakes, bringing in these professionals, having them kind of explore some of the areas that they specialize in to help provide you with some, overview, some general advice on different topics related to small businesses that can help you either get going or take your business to the next level. So, without further ado, let's hop into the story.
Sure.
So, kind of like last episode, where I brought in a couple of real estate brokers. This one's kind of gonna go down a similar path, whereby the 2 years that I spent in the concrete company, I didn't kind of get to the point where I could bring in an investment broker, start making plans for the future growth of the business, or retirement for sure. It was nowhere near that point in time. So we're going to kind of have to look, I guess, beyond what actually happened, and then just kind of expand upon some things that, maybe I've seen from clients, or, I'm seeing out of the firm at this point in time, and just provide some general ideas that way. So I guess what I wanted to kind of look at first was when I started up the business, and I think this is probably typical for a lot of small business owners, is you typically have to put in a lot of your own cash to get the business going. Usually credit lines aren't easily accessible by the small business entity in its own. So you're forced to, kind of put yourself out there on a limb, maybe throw up your retirement savings into a new business venture, So there is obviously some upside to investing in a business and kind of putting yourself out there. But there's also, some uncertainty as to, how long do I put those funds in? Is there, some sort of way to monitor my business growth with maybe my personal holdings, and finding kind of some sort of semblance of balance to all of it, making sure that everybody's taken care of, and that I'm maybe not putting too many eggs in one basket, like I know that I did. got a couple years into it, and, you know, with things falling apart, there was a significant amount of cash in there that was just kind of lost. And, you know, you're back to starting from square one. You know, if you're young enough, that's something you can maybe take in stride and kind of pick up and go from. But, you know, if you're getting later in life and you've got a lot of money invested in that business, there's a lot of risk entailed with that, and we just want to make sure that small business owners, clients are understanding kind of the pros, the cons of investing all that money in the business versus kind of diversifying that portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So, topic one, I just wanted to kind of look at how to grow your business overall, maybe looking at balancing those initial contributions into the business with maybe some of your personal finances, and just kind of giving business owners a bit of an idea as to what to look for, maybe just some broad-based investment ideas along that line.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thanks so much, Jared, for having me on the podcast here.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. You know, first off, I think the general question is, how does someone balance how do you balance growing a business while at the same time your personal finance? So I'd say the one word that is oftentimes a swear word to a lot of people, it's budget.
Oh,
right?
don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it.
So budget. Let's define what budget is. Oftentimes people look at budget and they say, well, it's a restraint. Well, you know what? So is a seatbelt, and it's going to save you in a head-on collision.
Right.
So a budget actually is a good thing, and it's going to help direct your money to where it needs to go before life will take it from you. So number one is just make sure that you got a good budget in place. Looking at your personal budget, make sure that it's lean, right? You are about to step into something that is going to cost you more than you're anticipating, and you might make a lot less than you're expecting. So make sure that you have a personal budget that is lean. Watch out for your expenses, for instance, on your vehicles, what your payments like. Next thing is your entertainment, going out, and make sure that stuff is lean. If you are going into business, make sure you're managing your expectations.
Gotcha.
Communicate with your family, let them know what's going on. It's really going to help you because it's going to take a while for you to succeed, and your personal finances, although managed well, need to be managed probably a little bit better. So you got to watch out on that. The next thing is use that budget right in your business. Make sure that you're budgeting your influx of money. So there's going to be days where you get a huge amount of income. Don't go and spend it all. Take time. Make sure that you are budgeting inside your business, telling your money where to go before expenses start taking it from you.
Okay.
So that'd be the first thought on that. The next one is make sure you got a bookkeeper in your corner.
Good point.
Bookkeeper is going to help you have a broad review of everything, and they're going to look at your expenses. They're going to look at the money that's coming in and going out, and they're going to help identify areas where you might be missing. And the next thing is, I'd probably also have a financial advisor in your corner too. Even at an early stage, just find someone who can take care of, sit down with you and look at, okay, this is how much we need personally, this is how much we should be drawing from the business. So there's a couple thoughts on that.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think having that plan in place definitely helps. I know when we went into that concrete business, we eventually had to put together a business plan to acquire a skid steer in that second year. But just going into it, it was one day we were working as employees here, and then the next day we're running a business. And there was no budget, there was no plans on how to move money from, the business to the personal. The bookkeeping was done internally, and, you try and take on too much, and then it all just kind of starts to crumble apart, because you're just not geared to take on all this yourself. You're not that specialist. So I guess that leads me into my next question. When we kind of got this started up, there was a big cash influx from us personally. And then, as I kind of mentioned, we get into that second year, we start, acquiring more equipment, trucks, etc., to expand the business. So at that point in time, then we start to take on a bit of debt within the company. Would have it been maybe a wise decision to maybe see some of that personal cash come back first before, taking out more debt? Is there, one or the other to look at that's more beneficial for that small business owner, or is it just kind of more of that planning thing to consider?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so important to have someone in your corner, another professional, especially with partners,
Right.
to go, hey, let's just take a step back before we sign our lives away.
Right.
Let's take a step back. Let's find out what we're about to do, right? Because it can really hurt you.
For sure.
So at that point, between 1 and 2 years, you're having a tough time getting financing at the bank,
Yeah.
right? You're probably not incorporated. So ideally, you'd want to get more outside money, not necessarily outside capital all the time,
Right.
because that can be a little more riskier,
For sure.
a little more costly for you, right?
Right.
So I would just say on that end, just make sure you're taking a step back with another professional, think an accountant, maybe an advisor, and look at the situation to determine what the best step is.
Right.
Because it's oftentimes just out of reaction that we're going, okay, here's a good opportunity,
For sure.
let's go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, the worst thing that can happen is you go bankrupt.
Exactly.
So there's ways around that
For sure.
with proper planning. So
Gotcha. So I guess on the topic of how to grow your business, is there anything else that you want to kind of throw out there for the guests that they should kind of take into consideration?
it's a good question. Let me just, I think we had some notes here. Yeah, I would say make sure that you're paying yourself first, as much as you can.
Okay.
Pay yourself first. Whatever money that's coming into the business, oftentimes the business is like a little baby. It's just going to need more
Right.
and more and more attention, more of your money. So take your time, make a plan,
Okay.
make sure that you're paying yourself first, whatever you can, and really, I would say build out your network as much as possible, so that you can begin to fill up your pipeline. That's going to definitely help with just more opportunity. Yeah.
Perfect. No, that sounds good. So kind of moving into topic 2, and this is fairly broad and obviously something that I did not touch on in the concrete business, but that's just planning for retirement in general. So I know in talking with Stephen before, he's kind of, given me some broad advice that, you should be maybe either involved in a business or a high-paying profession, have some sort of investment portfolio, maybe the stock market, and then have some sort of real estate portfolio as well. And then that way you're kind of covering all your bases. You're making sure that as markets change, you've got your kind of hands in a bunch of different pies and you're not subject to too much market instability. So I guess with that being said, if I would have kept the business, going for a number of years, and I had those original funds in there, is there a point in time that I should maybe look to, get into some business financing, maybe a line of credit or something like that, start pulling out those shareholder loans account, and then, making sure that my company is kind of working for me as opposed to sucking all my extra cash out of it?
Yeah. Again, your business is always going to want more cash.
Right.
Right. It's always going to want more cash. I think there's an age-old saying that says, my best investment is my business. tell it to the folks that lost their businesses in 2020.
Right.
So it is a really good investment, but there's also a lot of other great investments.
Right.
And so the key word is you got to think passive income.
Okay.
Okay, so passive income or other engines,
Right.
right? So your business is one engine.
Right.
Well, what if you had three engines? Wouldn't that be better?
I presume so.
Probably. So not only would you benefit off of more generated income, but it'd also be passive,
Right.
right? So that's kind of the goal is as your business begins to grow up, you don't need to feed it anymore. You can have the bank feed it with a line of credit because it's going to hopefully qualify for that. You pay back your shareholders' loan to yourself, okay? And now you start to look at other opportunities for yourself to keep that passive income going. I always like real estate, and I like the markets, and I like business because eventually these things are going to be passive income,
Right.
which you're just going to start funneling money to yourself.
Right.
So, say on that note, be thinking about how quickly can my company qualify for standing on its own 2 feet to qualify at the bank,
Right.
and then begin to remove some exposure that you have personally in order to benefit yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, I could even see that within the first 2 years of running that business. You know, in the first year, it was just my partner and myself. So if we were working, then the business was making money. If we weren't working, then no money was being made. Whereas you get into that second year, you start to hire some employees. Then you start to generate some profits off of the labor that they input into it. And then eventually, if you are successful and do things correctly, you should be able to get that business to the point where you can step back, step out of it, and it can operate by itself, and you can still earn a profit off of that. So yeah, it makes sense to kind of look at different options, you know, lines of credits, et cetera, to maybe leverage some of the existing equipment or whatever the case might be within the business to get yourself to that point and to be able to kind of start making some of that passive income.
Yeah.
For sure. Perfect. So as we go along, and I know this is a big discussion for a lot of my clients, it used to be a little bit more clean cut. I'd say nowadays, with changes in the Tax Act, it's a little bit more muddied. So just kind of touching on whether the owner should pay wages or dividends to himself. You know, is it best to look at the whole picture, personal and business, and kind of address that as one big cash flow pot? That's typically how I approach it. Is there anything else that might be useful to that business owner as far as maybe taking wages to generate RSP contribution room, that type of thing?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. So wages and dividends is a little bit of a age-old discussion, especially for folks that do not want to pay Trudeau. And that's
Very
the
true.
reality of it.
Very true.
So oftentimes people will opt for dividends, and they'll go dividends all the time.
Right.
But we have to look at the broader picture, as you said,
Right.
and there's a benefit to wages in its context, just as there's a benefit for dividends.
Okay.
So if you're drawing wages from the company, yeah, there's some upfront costs that you have to set up.
Right.
There is, you have to pay into CPP, and sometimes double because you're an employee.
Right.
The benefit though with paying yourself a salary is it is going to increase your RSP contribution room,
Right.
which it can benefit you if you're trying to draw money out
Yeah.
of the company, just as another tax avenue to be a little more tax effective on that. The downside is it does put you up in the tax bracket a little bit.
For sure.
So, got to find ways to reduce that on the wage side. On the dividend side, it's more flexibility. You don't have to pay into CPP.
Right.
Keep in mind at both ends, you're not paying into EI oftentimes.
Yep.
So you are leaving yourself exposed on that end. So make sure that you're getting proper protection for disability
Okay,
on both ends as a business owner.
for sure.
And then if you are making any future purchases coming to purchasing a house in the next couple of years,
Right,
you may want to increase that wage over the first couple of years so that you can qualify for that mortgage. Banks just love
right.
employees, they just always have, and I think they always will. So if you're taking a dividend, they might not count that
Right.
near as strong as a wage. So when you sit down with your accountant, and I know a guy, if you don't, sit down with your accountant and actually plan out more than just how much am I going to get back this year
Right.
for taxes,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes
That is the
Listen,
goal. Yeah.
don't just go after an H&R Block specialist. They're
For sure.
great, but if an accountant's going to do a little bit more than just getting you a return for that year.
For sure.
So,
And I would generally say, you know, if we have corporate clients in here, I like to see that end of it, plus I like to see the personal return.
Mm.
Because to me, you know, at the end of the day, yes, they're separate entities legally, but, you know, if the business works out the way it's intended, it turns into that retirement vehicle.
Mhm.
You want to make sure that those two entities are as cash flow positive between the two of them as physically possible to ensure you've got as much cash for retirement as physically possible. Perfect.
and the other
Yeah.
thing I just want to note is with because you're not contributing to CPP on the dividend side, you got to realize that on the wage side, even though there is some costs involved with it, with CPP, the CPP is indexed.
Right.
So you have to also think long term and go, what am I doing with the money that I'm not paying into CPP? You should be thinking, I should be offsetting that vehicle into certain investments so that it's going to be generating a return that's equal or better than CPP being indexed.
For sure.
So,
And I know we've got a few clients that kind of go down that road. They don't want to pay into the CPP, they take the dividends on a regular basis, and then say towards the end of the year, they'll cut that additional check for, I don't know, say $5,000.
mhm.
That goes directly into some type of personal
Yeah.
holding, and then that way, when you do get to retirement, you've got that bit of a
Mhm.
backstop there that the CPP otherwise won't be as strong for you. But I think one benefit a lot of clients find in that is, you know, if you're passing away and leaving that CPP pension to your spouse, there's could be a bit of a bump on the survivor benefits. And then if you're both passing away, then you're gonna have the CPD death benefit, but it's just a negligible amount.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're piling in a bunch of cash to your own investment account over an extended period of time, when you pass, whether it goes to your spouse or down to the kids,
Mhm.
that whole nest egg, you know, albeit it'll get taxed at that point in time, at least they're gonna get back more than a couple $1,000 from the government.
Yeah. So long-term planning is really the name of the game.
Right,
I think we're both on the same page.
for sure.
Plan it long-term. Don't just look for that immediate tax return.
Right.
So, yeah, that's awesome. That's so good.
And that's kind of something you'd be able to help a client with.
Yeah.
If they were to come in and say, you know, my accountant said, you know, we could look at this wage versus dividend thing, you could probably map out some of these things on the long
Yeah.
term and say, you know, this is gonna take you here with the CPP contributions, whereas maybe putting the same type of funds into X mutual fund will get you this particular point in time.
And we'll do that also with pensions as well.
Okay.
So when folks are looking at their turning of age and, you know, maybe they've been in a professional business for a long time, it's a defined pension plan. There's a buyout at age 55.
Right.
Okay, perfect. So let's look at what's going to be best for them. So we'll do the same thing with those folks too.
Right on. Right on. So I think getting into maybe the last kind of discussion point on this topic is just saving for retirement while you're maintaining that business. Because I mean, like you've said, the business is just gonna keep sucking the cash. What I've found with a lot of people, myself included, as, you know, maybe the business, you know, does a little bit better, you're able to take a bit more out, the personal living standards go up, it becomes very hard then for someone to say, you know, I need to tighten things up, roll it back, I can't be driving the whatever vehicle around anymore, I don't wanna give up my trips to wherever, you know, I'm used to this lifestyle now and I wanna keep this going. So how is the kind of best to maintain some sort of balance, planning for that retirement while maintaining that business?
Yeah, good question. I'd say as early on as possible, start paying yourself first.
Okay.
So number one, pay yourself first. If you can get to a place where you're doing 10% first to yourself, that's gonna be paramount.
Okay.
After that, after you pay yourself 10%, your business can survive off the rest. It's gonna do okay, all right? And there's something else I wanted to note on that, the diversify. So just make sure that you are diversifying that. If you don't have a holdco, maybe be thinking about a holdco, just as an opportunity so that you're making plans with personal money, but you're also making plans using holdco money. Because eventually, that business, you might be selling it up on, you might do some succession planning, maybe one of your children wants to purchase it. Well, you still got to retain some shares in there potentially while the accountant's working on getting cash into your account. So having a holdco there is a great place also to put other products, other investments, so that you're not having to pay the full tax amount on personal withdrawal of that money. So again, coming back to it is just with our clients, we love sitting down and having a plan.
Right.
And we circulate back to that plan and ask them where they're at on the plan.
Gotcha.
Annually, we'll sit down with them. Sometimes when they're about to make large purchases, we'll sit down with them.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would say pay yourself first.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good plan, you know, to get into that habit early on. And then as you're, you know, growing and evolving, to have those discussions with the accountant, the advisor, to say, you know, things are going well, you know, I've got a bit of excess cash now and I expect this to maybe continue now in the future. You know, are there certain mechanisms like that holdco that we need to put into place? And are there certain things that we can do with this excess cash to, you know, hit some of those retirement goals, maybe to plan for, you know, some business growth or, you know, equipment purchases. And then, you know, understanding the fact that, you know, down the road, if you want to put the business in a place for sale, you know, having some of these mechanisms in place beforehand will definitely help you, you know, be able to sell on that moment's notice if an offer does come in. So definitely good points on that side.
Because it can take years.
For sure.
To prepare a business for sale. So if you have an opportunity that comes by and you have to tell people, well, hold on a second, I got to take 7 years to prepare my business, the opportunity is going to pass you by.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
position yourself right up front, and you'll be prepared for opportunities, which I believe are coming up really soon here. With inflation the way it is, we think that there's going to be some good opportunities for businesses that have a good reserve in cash to perhaps buy up their competition. So just get lean, get mean, and get ready for the next season.
Perfect. Right on. So I guess in closing, are there any just kind of broad tips that you'd want to kind of give to the small business owner as to, you know, maybe some services you provide, or just something that you've been seeing a lot in practice recently, anything like that?
You know, when it comes to the business, I would just say this: good communication goes a long way. So, and so does expectations. So first off, just manage your expectations. It's going to take a little while for success to come your way. Don't give up. If you've got a family, make sure that you take time to sit down with them and you know, manage expectations. Help them understand, hey, listen, Christmas might not be as exciting this year, but we've got each other.
Yeah.
So it's really important to bring your family along with you on the ride. For myself, I grew up in a family where my dad transitioned into business, and there was lots of Christmases where we missed some great big gifts, but we got family time, and I really attribute that to my mom and dad just taking time to kind of let us know that they care about us, and the business is just needing to grow and grow.
Right.
As that happened, our family grew and had a great time as the business grew.
There you go.
They sold it, did really well.
Yeah.
So,
Perfect.
so manage expectations. Yeah. So I would just say again, back to what we're seeing in the markets,
Right.
what we're seeing with inflation. Just hold on to some cash. Don't do a lot of spending. Pay down any business line of credits as much as possible. Personal line of credits. Hold cash in reserve so that you can be prepared to buy up the competition. Because there's going to be some defaults coming.
Yeah, unfortunately, but that is kind of the way the conditions present themselves. For
Yeah.
sure. So, perfect.
So,
I think that's about it, Stefan.
Yeah.
I just want to say thanks again for hopping on the podcast. Appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to do that. I know you've provided a lot of great value to all the guests. If anyone wants to touch base with you, maybe put together one of these plans, figure out some, retirement goals for themselves, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
well, it'll probably be on the podcast notes.
100%.
So Van Santen at bridgelinewealth.ca.
Perfect.
Just shoot me an email, and I'd love to get connected with you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will definitely throw all his contact info in the show notes. For the Tax Talk podcast, I'm Jared Plon. Thanks for listening, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Take care.
Right on.
That was good.
Not bad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.